They came to build a new world, but instead, they vanished into thin air. No war, no bodies, no survivors. Only a single word carved into wood, CROATOAN, a word that still echoes across 4 centuries of silence. What happened to the people of Roanoke? Were they taken? Or did they simply disappear into the forest, never to be seen again? Welcome to Secrets Buried in Time, where forgotten history rises from the shadows, and the truth is never as simple as it seems. Tonight, we uncover one of America's oldest and darkest mysteries, the story of the Lost Colony of Roanoke. They came to build a new world, to plant their dreams on untouched soil, and to create a place where the English spirit could live forever. But what they found instead was silence. It began with the promise of a better life, families, craftsmen, and children crossing the wild Atlantic in 1587, led by John White, a man whose vision burned brighter than the sun that guided their sails. 115 settlers left England behind, dreaming of home on a distant shore. They would never see England again. The sea was calm as they approached the new world. The air smelled of pine and salt, and hope filled their lungs. They were supposed to settle in the Chesapeake Bay, a place said to be rich and safe. But something changed. Their pilot, Simon Fernandez, a man known for both skill and stubbornness, decided they would stop at Roanoke Island instead, a narrow strip of land off the coast of what we now call North Carolina. John White objected. He warned them that another colony had already failed there, but the decision wasn't his to make. The ships anchored, and the settlers disembarked. The sound of boots hitting the sand marked the beginning of a dream or a curse. The remains of the old fort stood waiting, decayed and silent, like a ghost of past failure. The settlers repaired it, mending walls and clearing weeds, their laughter echoing through the trees. But something about the island felt wrong. At night, the forest seemed to whisper. They heard footsteps when no one was there, and the cries of unseen creatures drifted through the mist. Some said it was just the wilderness, others that the island didn't want them there. Still, they tried to build their lives. They planted corn, gathered water, and sought peace with the local tribes. One man named Manteo, who had once traveled to England, became their ally. Through him, they learned to fish, to hunt, to survive. For a time, it almost worked. Then, in August, hope took the form of a child. Eleanor Dare, John White's daughter, gave birth to a baby girl, Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World. The settlers rejoiced. For a brief moment, Roanoke was filled with laughter again. Fires burned at night, songs echoed through the camp, and they believed they were part of something eternal. But paradise doesn't last. The crops began to fail, and the rain stopped coming. The natives who once helped them started to grow distant. Food grew scarce. Fear crept into every conversation. They looked to John White, their governor, for salvation. He promised to return to England and bring back supplies. He didn't know that this promise would become the last words his people would ever hear. White's journey back was long and filled with storms. When he reached England, war had broken out. The Aspenarda loomed, and every ship was seized to defend the homeland. White begged to return, but his pleas were lost in the noise of politics and pride. Days turned to months, and months to years. By the time he finally found passage again, 3 years had passed. 3 years of waiting, 3 years of silence. When he returned to Roanoke in August of 1590, the island greeted him not with joy, but with emptiness. The beach was still. The fort was standing, but there were no voices, no laughter, no fires, no signs of life. The settlement was deserted. The houses had been taken apart carefully, not destroyed. Tools were missing. The fences had been removed, as if the people had left on purpose. White's heart raced as he searched for signs of his family. He found none. And then he saw it, carved deep into a wooden post, one word: CROATOAN. Another tree nearby had the letters CRO. There was no cross above the carving, no mark of danger. It looked like a message. White believed it meant the settlers had moved to CROATOAN Island, where Manteo's tribe lived. Relief washed over him. They were alive. They must be alive. He ordered his men to set sail there immediately. But the ocean had other plans. A sudden storm rose from the sea, violent, merciless, impossible to fight. The ships were tossed in every direction, their sails ripped apart by the wind. For days they struggled to survive. When the storm finally broke, the crew refused to return. They were terrified. The sea had swallowed enough lives. White begged them, but they wouldn't go back. Defeated, he turned toward England, his heart shattered. He would never see his daughter, his granddaughter, or any of the settlers again. What happened to them remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Some believe they were killed by hostile tribes. Others say they joined the CROATOANs and lived among them, blending into their culture until no trace of English life remained. There are stories, unproven but persistent, of Native Americans with gray eyes and light hair, speaking strange words that sounded almost like English. But nothing has ever been confirmed. Archaeologists have searched the island for centuries. They've dug through the sand, the swamps, and the forests, hoping to find a clue. Some fragments of English pottery have been discovered miles away, as if carried by wandering hands long ago. A rusted sword hilt, a piece of a musket, a broken mirror, relics of a vanished world. But no graves, no bones, no evidence of what truly happened.
The word CROATOAN became a curse, a whisper that echoes through American folklore. It appeared again centuries later, carved into strange places, linked to disappearances, death, and mystery. It's as if the word itself carries the memory of the lost. Some say the colonists tried to leave the island on makeshift boats and were lost at sea. Others believe they were taken by nature, by hunger, or by something darker that lurked in the wilderness. The native legends speak of spirits that live in the trees, of islands that disappear when angered, of voices that call men into the forest, never to return. John White's final journal entry reads like a confession of despair. He wrote that the colony was gone, the fort empty, and his people vanished. He prayed for their safety, but admitted he might never know the truth. And then his writings end, abruptly, like the story itself. Over the centuries, the island has refused to give up its secrets. Expeditions have come and gone, using drones, satellite scans, and modern technology, but the ground remains silent. Even today, when you walk across the sands of Roanoke, it feels different. The air is heavy, the silence unnatural. Birds avoid certain areas. The trees creak even when there's no wind. Locals say that if you stand alone at dusk, you can hear faint voices, whispers that rise from the earth, calling names long forgotten. Virginia Dare became a legend. Some say she was cursed, transformed into a white doe that still roams the forests, watching silently from the shadows. Others believe her spirit still waits for her grandfather, John White, to return. The forest remembers her. The island remembers them all. And yet, not a single trace has ever been found. No bones, no graves, no farewell. Only the sea, the wind, and that one word, CROATOAN, etched into wood, echoing through time. Maybe they lived. Maybe they died. Maybe they became part of something the world was never meant to understand. What if they stepped into the forest and never came out, not because they couldn't, but because they found something they couldn't leave behind? The truth is, no one knows, and maybe we never will, because some secrets aren't buried to be found, they're buried to be feared. History tells us that Roanoke was England's first colony in the New World, but it became something else, a wound that never healed, a mystery that never died. More than 400 years later, it still asks the same question, whispering from the trees, from the waves, from the silence. What happened here? And as the tide rises around the island, washing over the sand, erasing every footprint that dares to appear, the sea answers with the same sound it's carried for centuries, soft, endless, and hollow. CROATOAN. 400 years have passed, and Roanoke still sleeps beneath the whispering pines and restless waves. No bones, no graves, no answers. Only a single word carved into time, CROATOAN. Maybe they lived, maybe they died, or maybe they crossed into something the world was never meant to find. History may have forgotten them, but the island never did. And if you listen closely, you might still hear the echoes of those lost voices, calling across the centuries, whispering to be found. If mysteries like this keep you awake at night, like, comment, and subscribe to Secrets Buried in Time, because the deeper you dig into history, the darker the secrets become.